Hello all, this is Monday's Wake Up. Good morning, beautiful people. We are live.
The sun is rising, the sky is blue. Good morning, grand risings, let's see what's new. It's the time of day for Sonia and crew. Good morning, grand risings. It's time to wake up with Sonia Poulton.
Good morning and welcome to Wake Up. How are you all? It's Monday the 11th of May. It's just gone 9:01 a.m. British summertime. I am your host, Sonia Poulton, journalist, broadcaster, resident troublemaker, and proudly so. How are you all? Good morning all. Good morning, Stolly and Based and Lenticular and Shin and Nikki and Mark. How are you all? And Mr. Dunham and Mrs. Pirate and Van Man and London Lady and Ruth and Ghetto and Jack and Pizza on the Pavement. Howdy from Still Asleep, 3 a.m. Iowa. Why aren't you resting? There's no time to rest, that's why. How are you? I hope you are all well. Welcome to the show that knows fear is one of the oldest tricks used to control people. And we're not having that around here, are we? No, indeed. What is on today's Wake Up? We will be joined shortly by journalist Warren Thornton, who will be analysing the UK politics and events following the local elections. We'll also be joined by former child star, latter-day activist and director Zed Phoenix, who will be talking about his allegations of abuse at the hands of members of the British establishment and what they tried and failed to do to stop him. And we'll also be looking at Bamber blocked, UFO files, state opening of Parliament and the King's speech, a dual march. And when is the Met going to put its own house in order? I ask because it is evident that the police chief of London is part of the weaponization of anti-Semitism. And I will be asking, are we safe in Mark Rowley's London? Plus, your shout. Final note, we're told the process is the punishment. And yes, in many cases it is, but I want to turn that on its head and talk about the pleasure in the process. So there you go. I can't even speak this morning. It's one of those days. I hope you are all well. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Sally. Good morning to you all, you beautiful, beautiful people. Madam Mantu, this is the first time I've watched your show. I'm happy to be here. Good. Welcome. Hello, Shem the lawyer. I hope you are all well. Thank you, James, for the early super sticker. I appreciate that. Bethany says, yay, merry Monday. Yes, indeed. Good morning, Peter Folder. Right. So events this week. Well, I have some concerns. Because on Wednesday, it will be the King's speech, which sets out legislative priorities at the state opening of Parliament. This is new laws, people. This is absolutely new laws. And I'm deeply concerned because at this moment in time, anti-Zionist views are protected in the UK. It is not illegal to hold anti-Zionist views, but they are so desperate to conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism that I am deeply concerned what the King will be revealing this Wednesday. So we shall see. And the following day, on May the 14th, the King's speech will actually be debated in the Commons, and the Home Affairs Committee will have a hearing on anti-Semitism. And on Friday, there will be a court hearing over the Golders Green attack. And on Saturday, there'll be dueling protests as Tommy Robinson leads Unite the Kingdom and the Palestine Solidarity Campaign hold the Nakba Day protests in London. Who agreed to have both them on the same day? Does that not concern anybody? Does that not sound like a powder keg? Does to me. And so many UK channels are now focused on being pro-patriot, which seems to translate as pro-Israel. And I don't know why people feel the need to shout about being British or English, but I've never felt the need to do that. And I think it's a bit weird and performative. I think a lot of it is done for content. And I'm deeply concerned about the dual marches this weekend. Deeply concerned indeed. So before we get there, and before I talk about my concerns to do with what's going on in London and the conflating of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, let's look at some news. So two co-owners of the non-league football club Malden and Tiptree have been charged with human trafficking for sexual exploitation as well as rape after an investigation by Essex police. Now, Barry Druitt Barlow, the blonde man in this picture, became known in 1999 as one of Britain's first gay fathers to become parents through a surrogate mother. And he has been charged alongside his partner, Scott Druitt Barlow. The pair appeared at Chelmsford Magistrates Court on Friday. The defendants spoke only to confirm their personal details. The defendants of Danbury, Essex, are alleged to have recruited young men before grooming them and subjecting them to sexual assaults, including rape, the court was told. There's a ton of stuff I could say, of course, but shan't at this stage because I don't wish to prejudice the case. Not in any way, shape or form. Robert says, I agree, there are a lot of stirrers online and off, Robert, but yeah, there are a whole load of people because they've seen value in the content of calling themselves patriots, but they're just useful idiots. It's the same old stuff. And today's show, I'm going to give you a heads up straight away, is in part focused on the catastrophic takeover of Zionists in my country and how that is impacting me and how it's impacting you, our politicians, our police, our media. All are compromised. Israel first. This is a serious state of affairs, and I take my role as a journalist with this knowledge very seriously. You know, it took me the longest time to get involved in what was going on in the Middle East. I stood back from it. It wasn't my arena. And really what forced me was to see what was happening in the UK and how infiltrated we are with the needs, wishes, and desires of the genocidal Israeli government. It's not acceptable. And we need massive pushback now. We absolutely do. On Friday's show, I talked about a visit I had from police on Thursday. That was to frighten me. That was to tell me to shush. And there's only a few times when I've had issues from the law about my work, and it's almost always been about my reporting of child abuse. Well, now you can add Zionism to that list, and I don't know whether you think there is a link or not between the two. Zionism is a subject that powerful people, as I say, want to conflate with anti-Semitism, but we must not let them. We must not let them. So let us talk a little bit more. My deep concern really has a lot to do with this man, Sir Mark Rowley, or Sir Mark Rowley, however you want to pronounce it. He and the CPS have made very clear that hate crime prosecutions are to be fast-tracked after the Golders Green attack. This is re-education in Starmer and Rowley's Britain. No wonder they brought Rowley back. Remember, he had retired from the Metropolitan Police in 2017, and they brought him back in 2020. And that was when he announced that Christian Bruckner was the number one suspect to do with Madeleine McCann. He's a state player, 100%. And it was on the 5th of May last week that the CPS announced that hate crime prosecutions will be fast-tracked in England and Wales. And you know what? These cops, these are the ones who arrived at my door, and they arrived at my door because they were hoping to get an early scalping. That's what they were hoping for. And on Saturday night, we heard that Fiona Rose Diamond, who has been on with us before, she's an activist, and she was getting off a train when she was greeted by a cop, and she had been reported on the train for holding a private conversation that was about her criticisms of Zionism, and the cop put her under investigation for Holocaust denial. Now, to be clear, again, about Zionism, this is a protected belief in the UK. And this follows the David Miller Tribunal ruling as of October 2024, I believe it was. And I am very concerned whether people like myself and Fiona Rose Diamond are safe in London when we have a cop, Sir Mark Rowley, who has had meetings with Israeli assets and lobbyists. He and his deputy, Matt Dukes, they have had private meetings with Zionist Zippy Hatovali. Okay, and that's not okay. And goodness knows who else. It is deeply concerning that such a senior cop is so politicized. Okay, deeply concerning indeed. And what concerns me is, where do we turn to when we are being harassed and harangued about our legally held views? You'd think that we could turn to somewhere like, why, the Free Speech Union, but we can't, because Lord Toby Young, who was essentially promoted to the House of Lords at the request of Kemi Badenoch, another Zionist. Well, Lord Toby Young, who runs the Free Speech Union, is also a director of British Friends of Israel Limited. There is nowhere to turn for our lawfully held beliefs. However, if I set fire to a Quran or abused a few Muslims, Free Speech Union would be all over it. They'd be all over it protecting me. That's what they do. And Golders Green is a real problem. We knew it. That's why I did a special report into it. They only want to say two Jewish people and will attack those who point out that there was a Muslim who was also stabbed. And atrocious reporting. Both the BBC and Reuters supposed to be respectable news outlets, but we know they're nothing of the sort. And their reporting has both stated UK man appears in court over stabbing of two Jewish men in London. So the third one doesn't count. Essa Suleiman has been charged with the attempted murder of 3 men. And you know what happened when Mr. Harriman, now you may or may not be familiar with Mr. Harriman. But he is he's involved at the South Bank Centre, and he's the chair at the South Bank Centre. The South Bank Centre has notoriously been very middle class, very white, but he's a black man who's the chair at the South Bank Centre, and the Zionists are doing everything they can to get him out. And you know why? Because he said, "Watch, there's 3 people." So the Daily Telegraph went after him, they smeared him, and then you had Zionists take his videos online, cherry pick it, cut it down, and then the Daily Telegraph reported on that. We are in trouble, people. We are surrounded by Zionists who want to censor us and want to make our freedom of speech unlawful. This is really worrying, and the top cop is in support of all of this. And of course, we should be concerned. Absolutely, we should. And so I've put an assortment of posts on social media to protect myself. And one was from a former detective who wrote, "As a former detective, I'm dismayed by the politicization of the police by this government. It has gone way too far, and for whose benefit? Certainly not the decent, law-abiding people who make up the fabric of this country." And Mark Rowley has positioned himself absolutely against Palestinian protesters. And he's launched extraordinary broadsides against the protests because Israel do not want the pro-Palestinian protests in the UK. And don't forget, at this moment in time, Israel is essentially running us. And somebody said to me yesterday, I mean, you saying that Israel is intervening in the UK's affairs is anti-Semitism. No, it's not. Don't conflate it. It's anti-Zionism. And we shouldn't have any external country with a foreign state intervening in our affairs. But the problem is our politicians are sold. Rowley is compromised, his private meetings deeply compromised. And the fact is that his police force has been repeatedly found to be institutionally racist by a series of reports. And now they want to tell us what racism is. And they do that by conflating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. That in itself is anti-Semitic. And I'm very concerned. They want to arrest as many people as possible. And thank you for the tremendous support for what I'm going through and what I have gone through. And, it's very small comparatively. I've already contacted my local MP. I will be pursuing this because those cops were sent out on a whim. They didn't even know why they rocked up at my door. They thought they'd come to the door of the person who had made the report against me. They had no clue, but it was the dog whistle. It was, she is anti-Semitic, and they came out, right? They came running out. They couldn't wait to come out. And we should be concerned. We absolutely should, because clearly we are not a priority in our own country. And a big shout out to Kat Brown on X. Good morning, Kat. I hope you're well. She did an excellent post, and I'm going to quote from it. She said, "I am just a British mum speaking out about why I am terrified of dropping my kids off at school every day. Every morning I look at our local state school, no guards, no proper security, fences around 4 foot in height and gates never locked. And I think to myself, if somebody wanted to get in, they could. I can't help but think about what happened in Southport." And Kat goes on to say, school security is being provided for some sections of our communities. And this is where our taxes are going. And then she did a breakdown. Protective security funding for 2026 to 2027. Jewish sites, 28.4 million. Muslim sites, 40 million. Other faith schools, mostly Christian, 5 million. Non-faith state schools where most British kids go to, a big fat zero. A big fat zero. And the real recorded attacks that have brought out all of this taxpayer money. Jewish schools, we are told 57 anti-Semitic incidents. Muslim institutions, 17 to 22 attacks. All UK schools, mostly ordinary state schools, the kind that working class kids like me went to. 748 knife offences and over 20,000 violent crimes. The government is throwing tens of millions of pounds at faith-based security for very specific reasons. These are all politicized, and we are in trouble, people. We are in trouble. And I will give you an example of somebody who was absolutely captured. Yesterday, there was a Jewish rally in central London. It was all the usual TV Zionists telling us what victims they are. Yes, and of course, and then they'll be back on their huge, massive platforms today because these Zionists are such victims. But there was this huge, massive Jewish rally in central London, loads and loads of Jewish flags and Iranian flags, interestingly. And Richard Tice from the Reform Party was on with Laura Kunsberg of the BBC. And she asked him about Glenn Gibbons, who has been elected as a Reform councillor in Sunderland in last week's local elections, rather. And he had said, when asked about the Nigerians in town, and he talked about the amount of Nigerians, and he said we should melt them all down and fill in the potholes. That's what he said about another human being, right? A Reform councillor. So Laura Kunsberg asked Richard Tice about it. This very short clip will tell you how captured we are. Listen to him.
Who's just been elected in Sunderland, previously suggested online that people should melt Nigerians to fill potholes.
We have an internal party process, but here's the point.
Well, it's not a very good one if somebody who expresses that can be elected.
We've heard all this smearing and the sneering. Let me tell you what people are really concerned about.
No, forgive me.
Laura,
that's not
I'm going later to a campaign against the scourge of anti-Semitism, right, which is the greatest threat facing us here in, particularly in London, but elsewhere across the UK. That's what people are really concerned about. We've stood up strongly for the Jewish community. And if people have said daft things, of course it'll be looked at. But, let's just remember we've got a party that has been successful, that is now the anti-Semitic Green Party. That's what people are most worried about.
Right, very serious. The greatest threat facing the UK is anti-Semitism. That's what people are worried about. No, it's not. People are worried about child abuse. People are struggling to make ends meet. The greatest threat, actually, or one of facing the UK is Zionism. Yeah, it is. So it's extraordinary that Richard Tice, aren't they supposed to be a patriotic party? It's extraordinary. He's representing a foreign state and the head of the newly newly formed Reform Friends of Israel, Jason Perlman, was until December a media advisor to Israel's president, Isaac Herzog. For goodness sake, Perlman claims that Israel has not committed a single war crime in Gaza. And the greatest threats to the UK include the Sustainable Development Goal, the attack on our livelihood, the attack on our free speech. I don't believe for a second that your ordinary, average, everyday Brit believes that anti-Semitism is the greatest threat facing the UK. Absolutely ludicrous. It is their greatest threat, Randy. That's right. Absolutely. Yes, Reform are as deep in it as the rest, Boop. Absolutely, they are. So I was fairly appalled by that. You can see how it's all coming together. And you know what? Just to continue on the theme of are we safe in London, I see that the Metropolitan Police are still sharing photos of dead bodies in WhatsApp groups using their personal phones. And an internal Scotland Yard investigation found that these Metropolitan cops routinely use their own phones and transmit images via WhatsApp of dead bodies. That's extraordinary stuff. Do you remember when they did that with poor Nicole Smallman and Bieber Henry, two sisters who were murdered in Friant Country Park in Wembley in June 2020? And they were murdered by Daniel Hussein, an absolute psycho. And if that wasn't bad enough, the cops on the scene then took photos of their dead body and shared it in a joking manner in their WhatsApp group. These are the greatest threats, Mark Rowley. These are the greatest threats. You're bloody coppers. That's a threat to us. Yes, it is. Absolutely. And, you know, what about the fact that currently Metropolitan Police officers, 1 serving and 4 former officers, are under investigation for potential misconduct regarding their handling of sexual abuse allegations against Mohammed Al-Fayed. Mohammed Al-Fayed gave Metropolitan Police cops fancy Harrods baskets, and he bought their silence and their complicity. You need to clear up your own house, Mark Rowley, instead of coming to my house, right? That's what you need to do. No, I am not scared of you. I am not scared of you. You and people like you, you are a traitor to our country. Absolutely. And that is not illegal to say. We are still entitled to an opinion. And also, continuing on the problems with Metropolitan Police, meanwhile, in a court local to me is this man, Peter Kirkham, a former senior Metropolitan Police officer, is in my local court accused of being a rapist. Former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector Peter Kirkham, a regular on Sky News, GB News, etc. He's facing multiple charges, including rape, sexual assault, and coercive control. The prosecution alleges that Kirkham groomed and sexually exploited 2 vulnerable young men, supplying them with drugs and using his position. The court has been taking place in Kingston Crown Court. And so obviously it's a live trial. I'm not going to say too much about that, but I do think that Sir Mark Rowley has enough on his plate to be worrying about without worrying about what we are saying and meeting innocent people off of trains after they've had a private conversation. Outrageous stuff. Outrageous stuff. Right. I think I've said all I need to at the moment about this man, but it's not over for me. Oh, no. And these 2 cops, they were pleasant. I have nothing against them personally. They were doing their job, but what they did was wrong. And I will be pursuing it. I absolutely will. It's all totally unacceptable, peeps. Right. First of all, thank you so much to Nymph for my super sticker and to Jill. No problem, Jill. Thank you to Milford and thank you to Danielle Krause. I appreciate all your early super stickers and to James as well. I see that Jeremy Bamber, we've talked a lot about Jeremy Bamber around here. Jeremy Bamber, of course, was convicted of the murder of 5 members of his family, including his mum and dad, including his sister, and including his 2 nephews. And it's that was in 1986. He was convicted, and now it would appear he's gaining some traction. People are starting to realise that all these years on, 40 years on, that his story doesn't add up because, gosh, police make mistakes, it turns out. Anyway, what they've actually done, because he was gaining a really decent attention, New Yorker, we've covered it. I've had people from the campaign on with me, and there are lots of holes in his story, and it really needs to be reviewed, and it needs to be referred back to the Court of Appeal. And actually, I truly believe that this is a miscarriage of justice. Guess what they've done now? The prison have now put essentially a media ban on him. What they've done now is they are now restricting him from contacting media. Now, I've been in communication with Jeremy before. There have been other people, such as Simon Hattenston, who's done some tremendous work around this case. And in fact, I was approached, I don't think I've told you about this, peeps. I was approached a short while ago by a production company who were doing a production, I think it's for Channel 4, about Jeremy Bamber. And I had a conversation with them, but I wasn't keen. Like I wasn't keen in doing the Madeleine McCann documentary either. I just don't want to filthy myself up by getting involved with mainstream media anymore. But I wonder whether the reason that there's this ban on him communicating with media is to do with the documentary that's coming, which I think hopefully is going to actually show the sides of Jeremy that the media have not, because they've absolutely demonized this fella. I mean, there's no doubt about that whatsoever. But the police and the prison are saying that, no, prisoners' access to the media policy does not provide blanket bans. Any restrictions on communication requires justification and will take into account factors such as the need to protect victims from serious distress and maintain confidence in the justice system. Well, sorry, but all the victims are dead, right? And it is possible that Jeremy Bamber is also a victim. I am so ticked off today, peeps. You may notice in my tone, like the level of oppression around us, even when you believe, and lots of other people who have looked into your case believe you have suffered a miscarriage of justice, they now want to stop you being able to communicate with the outside world and try and get attention to your case. It's like damned if you do and damned if you don't. These people are disgusting. No amount of money can buy his time back, Humphrey. Absolutely. I saw the doc, very damning against him. Yes, Summer Breeze, the documentaries that have been made about him are damning, unquestionably. That's why they need a different look at it. It's hard not to be me. Oh, it's hard not to be. I got you, boob. Yeah, absolutely. A very great deal of anger coursing through me this morning at what is happening. On a slightly lighter note, of course, I see that the Pentagon published dozens of files on alleged UFOs. The public can make up their own minds, they said, on strange sightings, said the US Defense Department. They did that last week. I think it was Friday. They released a trove of documents related to alleged alien phenomena, including unidentified flying objects, saying it is up to the public to make up their own minds about the mysteries they contain. Is this a distraction, peeps? Donald Trump had separately asked government figures, including Pete Hegseth, Defense Secretary, to identify and publish files relating to alien and extraterrestrial life, unidentified aerial phenomena, and unidentified flying objects. These files, hidden behind classifications, have long fueled justified speculation. It's time the American people see it for themselves, says Pete Hegseth. Is this... Oh, it's the last hooray, said Boob. UFOs. So anyway, there's loads of archive material. Lots of it is redacted, and it's listed alphanumerically coded files without explanation or detailed context. One is described as covering unidentified flying objects and flying discs documented between June 1947 and July 1968. Diversion. Yes, indeed. And just quickly, before Warren joins us, I just want to see if he's here already. That Hantavirus, where are we with that? Cranking up the big wheels. See, they brought out Chief Tedros. And I see that some of the investors in rectifying this situation include the Gates Foundation. How shocked are we? How utterly shocked are we? And Happy Camper, good morning to you. Always send me loads of tweets. Pointed out a tweet to me today that Jake Rosmarin, the media's heavily promoted influencer who happened to be on that Hantavirus cruise ship, was an intern at the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs and worked for Hillel in college. All this, and we haven't even been able to prosecute those responsible for the first wave of propaganda against us, C-19. The Department of Justice will not be arresting or doing anything to Dr. Anthony Fauci. It's expected that they will let the statute of limitations for lying to Congress expire. And also, it seems that doctors are baffled. They're baffled at the increase in sudden adult death in cancer and myocarditis. How can doctors be baffled about this? How can they? It's a bizarre world indeed. Let us bring in Warren. He's here and we've got plenty to talk about. Haven't we, Warren? We've got plenty to talk about.
Good morning, you fugitive from justice. How are you?
I'm absolutely fabulous. I'm absolutely. Do you know what? I'm really glad they did that, because not only was I able to pick up loads and loads of information, but I wouldn't let them in. And in Parks, my dog was kicking off at them. But also, I was very aware that my neighbours, my next door neighbours, have a Ring camera, and I knew that it was recording them, and it recorded the entire conversation. And I've already sent a letter, an email to my local MP. I want a meeting because there is much to discuss. So yes, yeah. I'm absolutely fine, Warren, but we're going to kick ass. We absolutely are. And I wanted to talk to you, for those who aren't familiar with Warren. He's a geopolitical analyst, he's a journalist, he's a regular favorite on Wake Up. And I wanted to talk to Warren about, well, all kind of like the fallout and what had happened at the UK's local elections last week. It's some crazy times we're living in, Warren. Did you happen to see Richard Tice saying that the biggest threat facing the UK at the moment is anti-Semitism?
Yes, absolutely. And of course, we've got that, haven't we? I mean, they pretty much captured Labour. They pretty much captured the judiciary, the police force. I mean, you name it, it's everywhere. So you're just going to get more and more of that, Sonia, I'm afraid. And of course, we had all sorts of shenanigans going on. In fact, we've got a count going on today, would you believe?
What's that?
We've got a count going on today. Basically, what happened was the Workers' Party of Great Britain came in second to the Labour candidate. So they didn't just have one recount, they're having a second recount later on today. Because the Workers' Party candidate beat the Labour candidate by 6 votes to second place and obviously a council seat. And Labour have started all sorts of shenanigans, wanting recounts and all sorts.
Right. So let's talk about that, because obviously as this week unfolds and as it starts, Prime Minister Keir Starmer's position is absolutely under threat. There are all manner of people who want that position now. And his party took a huge, massive drubbing, didn't it? And I mean, what is it? Is this because the stuff that he's been coming out with to do with Israel and his Zionist views? What is it exactly? Because there's some reason that UK voters said no, Labour, they're out, they're on their way out. What do you think happened?
Well, I think it's absolutely everything. I mean, he stole the winter payments. He's lied left, right, and centre. Over the grooming gang scandal. He tried to stop that from actually happening. Then he appointed, look at the people he appointed. There's Israel as well, with his links to Mandelson and everything that he lied over. Then he goes and appoints Margaret Hodge, of all people. And then, of course, he brings in Gordon Brown, which is a bit like, how can I put it? It's a bit like making Harold Shipman in charge of the NHS. And then, of course, you've got Harriet Harman with the pie controversy being made a special envoy for women, for girls and women. I can't think of anybody worse, Sonia.
Well, that's a really good cue. Let's have a listen to an old clip of Harriet Harman being asked about her role with the NCCL and PI, the Paedophile Information Exchange.
Working for an organisation which did have this organisation with the extraordinary name Paedophile Information Exchange as an affiliate. That's something people would surely expect you to apologise for. I mean, that's a terrible misjudgment, isn't it, to work for an organisation like that?
Well, there had been a big argument within the National Council for Civil Liberties in 1976 where PI were trying to put forward their views and influence NCCL, and NCCL pushed them out, would not even let them speak at their annual general meeting, and turned against them, and that happened before I went there. So when I went there, they had no influence on my work, which was, wide-ranging work.
I understand
and to
that, but when you were working there, this organisation was still affiliated. That is something that a lot of people now want you to apologise for on the grounds that it was a colossal misjudgment to work for an organisation with these links.
Well, it was regrettable that they even existed. It was regrettable that they had anything to do with NCCL ever.
So it was regrettable. So that's quite an infamous interview. I'm not sure. I think it might have been a Sky News interview that she gave. And so she's been appointed to talk to me about it. So she's been appointed to the role for women and girls. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. She's a special envoy for women and children. When you consider that Labour tried to cover up the grooming gang scandal and made all their MPs do exactly that and vote against the motion so that you couldn't find out what the government knew. They did the same thing with Mandelson. They wanted that to be covered over. And of course, Labour Friends of Israel, 3 of them, including Jonathan Reynolds, literally put forward a motion to deny anybody seeing what the government and everybody else knew. And then you have Harriet Harman, who, let's be absolutely clear here, a few years back turned around and said that there would be, as far as she could see, if there was no real emotional damage between sexual activities between a child and an adult. And that is absolutely staggering, Sonia. And it is amazing when you get Gordon Brown, who's mixed up with the Epstein scandal, Clarence Mitchell and Gordon Brown, of course, with the Madeleine McCann case and everything else. They make mistake after mistake. I mean, you couldn't do this on purpose, Sonia, if you tried.
I mean, it is really concerning. So I think it's a measure of desperation, isn't it, when they start to bring in the old hands? So what Gordon Brown, what are they hoping Gordon Brown is going to do?
Well, I don't know what he thinks they're going to achieve, because remember, when he left office, they literally left a note saying there's no money in the till, we're off. The problem that we have, of course, is Gordon Brown is mired in all sorts of controversy. He was deeply unpopular as Prime Minister when he took over from Tony Blair. And of course, when you look at the people they're bringing in, Margaret Hodge, of course, for Morgan McSweeney, Margaret Hodge is mired in controversy where she had to apologise to victims back in 1980. And of course, you're talking now about Gordon Brown once again, whose spin doctor was Clarence Mitchell, who left to go and join. It was really nice to see him not get elected in the local council election.
Exactly. We'll get to that. We'll get to that when we talk about reform. You're absolutely right. And yes, so, but here's the thing though. Why do you think, because obviously this did appear that this local elections was more of a victory for reform than anybody else. So yeah. Why do you think that people have turned to reform? Because reform clearly are no different to all the others. But why do you think people have turned to reform?
It's just, can they do any better? I think it's out of desperation, to be honest. It's out of desperation here, Sonia. I mean, we've tried Conservatives. They were absolutely terrible. Now, whether you like the idea of the immigration or not, the migrants coming over on boats, and people have different sides of that. It's clearly a worry for the British public. So, of course, they want somebody to stop it. The Conservatives had their chance. They didn't do so. Labour have not really done so. And, of course, Labour and Conservatives, as people always say, 2 cheeks of the same backside. But really, what they've done there is they've just gone out of desperation. We know they're not much different, but, hey, it can't hurt to give them a go. And, of course, the Greens are completely hopeless. Zach Polanski always reminds me of somebody who shouldn't be anywhere near politics.
I'd say that about all of them. I have to say, I mean, I'm certainly no fan of his either. I mean, that's the thing, is what choice is there, for goodness sake? So let's talk about reform, because of reform, everybody's like, oh, this is the next Prime Minister in waiting. Do you think Nigel Farage is the next Prime Minister?
He probably will be, but he'll have to do a deal. But he's no better than the rest. This is just controlled opposition, and of course, people are buying into it left, right, and centre. He's not going to do anything along those lines. He's big fan of, shall we say, the bankers and everything else. And it's just more and more of the elite nonsense that we're getting here. And people are fed up of a world run by elites doing all sorts of shall we say, underhand shenanigans and everything else. There's no question, Sonia, that the people of Britain they're so tired of all of this.
Yes, tired. Nationally, Reform UK, they were the biggest victors, right? So they won 406 seats. That was at the time of writing. And that was ahead of 262 Conservatives and 261 Liberal Democrats. And much was put to the side about money that Farage had been given. That 5 million from who the Observer calls the man who bought Britain. What can you tell us about this and Christopher Harborne? And why does Farage always get such an easy ride in mainstream media?
Yeah, well, he got 5 million, didn't he, as a gift, apparently, to beef up his security. And of course, because he wasn't an MP at the time, it was a couple of months before he was elected, but everybody knew he was getting in. He didn't have to declare it under the register, but there are rules in the register that say any donations you have sort of 12 months prior and everything else. There's all sorts of rules and legalities around it, but of course they all skirt around it, Sonia. It's quite incredible. I don't know whether you're aware of this, and here's just a thing that you get as well, which is quite incredible. When you look at the MP's money, when they're deselected, they get about 3 or 4 months of their actual wages, which is about 90 odd thousand. And when they're in the Houses of Parliament, they get 260 odd thousand for helpers to work in their office. They also get an office allowance and London waiting as well. So it's a real, reform. Let's put it this way: Farage is at the top of the food chain when it comes to getting donations. But they've all got their hand in the till, every single one of them.
Exactly. But the thing that I find so objectionable about Farage is that he's managed to appeal to working class people when in fact he will absolutely do working class people over. And there's this footage had emerged from 2020 where Nigel Farage was like fleeing from the scene of being asked then about Christopher Harborne. So they've been essentially hiding this. They're hiding this, aren't they? They don't want to talk about this, and it's problematic. Do you think he's broken rules then? Is that what you're saying?
He's certainly bent them. Legally, right. He hasn't done so. But let's put it this way: you would turn around and call it sharp practice without any shadow of a doubt. It's a bit. How can I put it? It's a bit like selling furniture to customers who come through the door and taking their money, knowing you're going bankrupt next week.
Right. Exactly. And what is this I'm hearing about? There's been such an assortment of reform councillors who have either resigned since the election or they've been forced to quit. You heard anything about that?
Yeah, absolutely. There are certain reform councillors who've come out and said all sorts of crazy things, including using Nigerians to fill potholes if you melt them down. I mean, that was one thing. And there are a couple of councillors. There was one in the ward of Brent who ended up getting, who made a rather silly statement. Of course, just before they went to the voting polls, he ended up with only 250 votes when it looked as though he was going to get a seat. So there are, should we say, any number of people that have crossed over from Conservatives and Labour as well. One of them, of course, our friend Clarence Mitchell. And these people have crossed over. And this is rats deserting a sinking ship, Sonia, and a lot of them are terrible, horrible human beings.
Yeah, exactly. And good morning to Andy Ed. You actually pointed out to me about Clarence Mitchell. So that was, to me, really great news, because Clarence Mitchell is your original state asset. He's a defector, right? He went from the Conservatives in Reading and hoped that he would set sail on the reform ship, right, in Reading. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened is in a place called Emna Green in Reading. And of course, he was the Conservative, the leader of the Conservative Council there, or the leader of the Conservatives in the council. Now, of course, Clarence Mitchell was the spin doctor for Labour and then jumped ship to go and work for the McCanns. And I remember your fantastic work, Sonia, when he was trying to get in as a Conservative MP at Brighton Pavilion, and you doorstepped him and a few of us stood up various meetings and asked him about the McCann thing. And of course, he very, very quickly, and he lost Caroline Lucas by a couple of thousand votes, I believe. And of course, ever since then, he became a councillor. So he'd gone from being a spin doctor for Labour to being a prospective Conservative MP, then a Conservative councillor. And then just before the elections, he jumped ship to Reform. He only ended up getting 800 odd votes, and the Conservative the Conservative guy who stood got over 1,200. So Clarence Mitchell didn't get back in as a councillor.
So Jan says, Warren, who do you suggest should be in the government? Still Labour, Tories and the rest? Please answer.
Right. I've come across this time and time again. I honestly believe that the people, shall we say, that are in all the parties, they're going to do whatever they're told by the people at the very top.
The problem.
I think independent candidates are the way to go. You might have some terrific arguments in the Parliament, but if you had 650 independents who were representing you, my thing to you would be, when was the last time somebody came to the door and said to you, and they always say, when I get elected, I will do this. How about they come to your door and say, I'm running for Parliament. What would you like me to do if you vote for me?
Right. So what about this man? Because I think this is like a uniquely social media phenomena. But what about him? Didn't they get 7 places or something in Great Yarmouth, his area?
Yeah, Great Yarmouth, and of course you're going to get that around the border. When you're going to get that, you're going to get that in coastal areas, Sonia, aren't you? Because that's where, shall we say, the immigration sort of stack up a lot more. And of course, this is, once again, it's a bit like all the other sort of parties. They're not really going anywhere. All they're going to do is drag a bit of the reform vote. How many candidates they're going to stand at the next election? It's like the Greens, and I'm not being funny, Sonia, let's just look at the Green Party. In Brent, when there were 2 independents running there, we had the Greens actually approach them and say, come and run for us. When they didn't, they stood paper candidates against them so that they took votes away from the independents. And of course, 3 Labour councillors got back in. That is rotten politics for me, Sonia, and this is the same thing.
It's gaming the system, isn't it? That's the problem. So you think that Rupert Lowe is probably not going to kind of advance beyond where he currently is, because the thing is, they're all, not they, but his followers are bleating about the fact that they've got 7 council seats. But as other people have pointed out to me, the BNP had 50 council seats as one example, right? So 7 means really nothing in the grand scheme of things, does it?
No, you're absolutely right. He might become the MP for Great Yarmouth. That's it. Right. And he'll be the only one there. It's the same with the Liberals. They keep winning councils, but of course you always notice they always stand in the affluent areas rather than anywhere else in the inner cities. They pretty much get control of the affluent councils. That's not going to transfer into more than 40 seats at the general election, no matter how many councils they win.
Right. And I want to go back to reform because there's so much tooting. First of all, and I've said this for a very long time, Nigel Farage would be nowhere without the assistance of the BBC. When they repeatedly put him on Question Time, he was barely known. He was a fringe politician who had failed repeatedly to get voted into his own domain, into his own territory. But the BBC, so he is a media creation. There's no doubt about that at all. But the thing is that, as I say, my concern is that he appears to appeal to working class people. But reform oppose a rise in minimum age. They oppose expansion of free school meals. They oppose help with school uniforms. I mean, they are really anti-working class in every key respect. Warren, is people under some kind of, I don't know, delusional bubble about them? Or is it just desperation, like you said? I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Well, Farage quits everything he ever does, Sonia. Let's face it. He quit UKIP. He quit, of course, when the Brexit and everything. So eventually he'll quit this as well. And of course, people are under a delusional bubble. If they think for one second, that there's going to be mass remigration of immigrants coming over, you're completely deluded. Very simply, what they would like is they'd like an upper class, a superior class, and of course, they would like a much lower class of workers. And let's face it, Farage is very much for war against Russia, very much for war against Iran. He calls them both regimes. So nothing is going to change, Sonia. It's just putting on a turquoise tie instead of a blue or red one.
And I think those people are eating themselves as well. I saw this tweet yesterday from somebody called Sass, whose Twitter bio was Remigration English Patriot. And she was very upset because she had been essentially cancelled from appearing at a York Restore event. And that was because she had tweeted a picture of Restore councillors with the caption, exactly what British politics should look like, white, British, proud. Well, already I can't stand people like that anyway. But nonetheless, the whole Restore thing, isn't it supposed to be about white, British and proud? And then she'd been dropped from that lineup. So isn't that Restore going against what they've already promised their own people?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what they say, Sonia, there is no loyalty in politics whatsoever.
Exactly.
If you think you're in the wrong game. And of course, when you look at this, they're going to be the winners, but they probably won't get a national majority. So they'll have to do a deal with either Conservatives, which is highly likely. The Lib Dems, they're certainly not going to do one with Labour. Labour look like they're going to get absolutely destroyed, even though they're lining Wes Streeting up to be the next leader of the Labour Party.
It's just literally one Zionist after another,
Yes.
isn't it? So do you think that is the qualification now to advance in politics? You have to be a Zionist.
Oh, absolutely, Sonia. Angela Rayner might be the pick that they want, that certain people in the Labour Party want. Let's talk realism here. Andy Burnham's not going to get in. The Labour Friends of Israel are going to make sure that doesn't happen. Even if they have to back, if one candidate stands down and Andy Burnham stands, they'll pour money into the other people's campaign to make sure that he doesn't get into Parliament. That will happen. And of course, Angela Rayner, of course, has lost a lot of support now because of the seats that she's lost in her ward in the council, and she needs Andy Burnham to prop her up. Angela Rayner isn't going to get in. Wes Streeting, he is a Bilderberger. He's got a very close association with Mandelson going a long way back. He goes to work on the other bus, I think is the phrase. And of course, when you look at Wes Streeting, he's got all the tools and of course, he's been on 4 trips to Israel. So this is the anointed one waiting to take over from Starmer. Everything changes, but remains the same.
What are your thoughts going away from all of this, really? Because there's obviously, at the same time as this is happening, in the Central Criminal Court in London is the case of the 3 men accused of Starmer arson. And that's some weird stuff. I mean, honestly, Warren, it's so weird stuff. They're claiming that they got their orders from somebody called El Money, and it was to do with Russia. And obviously, it's a live case, so we have to be really careful. But what are your thoughts that you can legally say about this?
Well, I think he's the judge in the case. I'll say this: the judge in the case was promoted literally by the Lord Chancellor, and of course that's appointed by the King. And of course you've got Prince Andrew, who's mired in Epstein, is his brother, and then of course the judge Neil Garnham, who is in charge of was promoted basically by Lammy. But of course the recommendation for the King to approve it comes from the Prime Minister. So having just got promoted a month beforehand, Sonia, by literally Keir Starmer, he of course then told everybody that you're not allowed to talk about Keir Starmer or the Ukrainian connection. Now, when did you ever know, Sonia, a case at the Old Bailey where motive was not allowed to be aired?
Never. And I've been a witness at a case of the Old Bailey, so I know how it goes. So no, absolutely never, ever. And obviously we were to talk much more about this at the end of it. But so what else is happening? What else is going on? Do you know anything about Donald Trump? Isn't he in China this week?
He wants to go and have a meeting with China, yes. They've just had a set of idiotic proposals, which we predicted that they would go absolutely nowhere. America sent a set of proposals to Iran regarding the Strait of Hormuz. Iran threw them in the bin. Iran sent one back to America. They threw them in the bin. And of course, they were trying to manipulate the markets. And do watch out for this, because the American administration and Barack Rabbit, I'm going to say his name because I can actually prove it, he actually reports that there's going to be a deal just at the weekend. And of course, he was formerly Israeli 8200 intelligence. And of course, he works for Axios. Now, they always get together with the State Department and Israel and say when the markets are about to be open and say a peace deal is very close, everybody makes a ton of money on oil futures. And then the Iranians turn around and go, We never said that we'd agreed to any of this whatsoever. So they fluctuate the market, and meanwhile, the elites get very, very rich, and everybody else pays at the petrol pump.
I'm so exhausted with them all, Warren. I really am, because it's literally all the world is a stage, really. And we see it so obviously now that I still don't understand why people don't demand more, why they don't demand a change in the kind of voting system, the political structure. I just don't get it. I think that people are probably so dumbed down, so exhausted from just trying to make ends meet. I mean, these are, to me, what's going on is the attack on us as people. That is the greatest threat that we're dealing with. And yet we're constantly distracted with absolute nonsense. Tell me what else is of interest to you this week and what's on your table.
Yeah, absolutely. But I will just say this. All the people who come and watch your show, Sonia, they're all great people, and they're all fighting hard to keep the, shall we say, common sense and decency alive, which is great. But getting on to what's on the table as well is the situation in Ukraine. Now, I'm going to tell everybody exactly what happened here. There was a phone call between the Americans and Vladimir Putin, and Vladimir Putin turned around and said, if they drop a bomb on the May Day parade, if the Ukrainians do that, then, of course, we're going to absolutely flatten Kiev. And, of course, that will be very near some of the NATO areas, or shall we say some of the embassies where we have sort of all these places, you know, the Germans and the Americans and everything else. So Donald Trump got hold of Zelensky very, very quickly, and world leaders in the UK, France, Germany, and said, do not do anything because the Russians are absolutely serious. So that just goes to show you, Sonia, who is actually running the war in Ukraine. It is all this nonsense we get in Europe. We're going to do nothing. When the Americans say jump, we say how high.
I mean, that is literally where we're at, and it's just painful. We in England, we seem to be at the kind of, we're almost victims to these forces that we have nothing to do or nothing to say about, and we have these lunatics on the world stage, whether it's Mark Rowley or Keir Starmer or whomever, and none of them are there for our greater good. None of them at all. And let me just go on, Warren. What are you going to say?
I've got a real problem with Mark Rowley and the Met Police.
I was just going to say to you, what are your thoughts about him?
Well, Mark Rowley is the same. He's been invited to go to Israel, go and speak at Israel, at conferences in Israel, and former Met Police officers, the last three people who were Cressida Dick and many others, have travelled to Israel and given keynote speeches there. And the Metropolitan Police actually send people to Israel for training, Sonia.
It's extraordinary stuff. The capturing is huge. And the thing is I have no problems with anybody wanting to be political. But if Mark Rowley wants to be political, then he has to resign from his position as, you know, the leader of police. I mean, he's the most senior cop in England and Wales, and he's very clearly in the court of Israel. You're supposed to be like policing without, you know, not being partisan. And he's clearly partisan. Warren, before you go, the last word to you.
Yeah, very simply. So we'll be digging in because I got a bit fired up when I saw that you've been doorstep, Sonia. So I got a bit fired up. I spoke to a pal of mine in MI5, and I'm currently digging into Met Police officers that like Brazilian lady escorts in central London. So look out for that.
Oh, very interested. Add it to the litany of other things where they are fouling up, where they're busy on people's doorsteps. Warren, you're an absolute star as ever. Everybody, this is Warren Thornton. You can catch him nightly on warrenthornton.com. Take good care of yourself. Lovely to have you with us, Warren. Have a lovely week.
Thank you. God bless to everyone.
You too. Wonderful. Wonderful to have him with us. Absolutely wonderful. So there you are, folks. And yes, I know it is absolutely exhausting. We're all exhausted dealing with these awful, awful parasitical people, the so-called elites, when they're nothing of the sort. Before I bring in my next guest, I just want to tell you about a scout leader. This is the world we're living in. And by the way, today's show isn't monetized just because of the type of conversations we're having. It's not suitable for monetization. That's absolutely fine. But this is the type of stuff that we're having to deal with that just, you know, grinds my gears, as they used to say on Family Guy or wherever it was they said it. But a scout leader, James Mortarboy, problematic name, searched the internet to amass a huge collection of children, including babies, being assaulted by adults. He downloaded more than 1 million images of child abuse over a 25-year period. And Exeter Crown Court was told all this. Police examined his computers. They found too many images to review. But never mind, peeps. Never mind, because he was given a suspended sentence. That's the world we're living in. That these predators, these pedophiles, they can download 1 million images and still get away with it. Because they're busy on our sodden doorsteps checking if we're thinking correctly. That's the problem with the world that we are living in. I mean, there's so many problems, actually. Lyra says, we need zero tolerance on anything that abuses our children. And Mr. Dunham says, oop, that's going so fast. Said it's obvious now. It's about what the elite want. As for us, what we want is irrelevant. Yes, but we're going to make it relevant, right? They're constantly rewarded. 0.33% of UK police declare themselves Jewish, says Captain Flint. And save our sausages. I don't know what that's about. It's got to stop, Humphrey. Right, Milford, don't you dare mention that. You'll be in trouble. Mark wants to know if they're trying to normalize paedophilia. Well, that is a question I may well ask my next guest, because I think if anybody's got an insight into something like that, then he probably has. Shall we bring him in? Yes, Jane, we do need to see all of this brought to light so we can change it. That's the thing, is we can't do anything about the things that we don't know, right? We can't do anything about that, but we can make substantial changes we can attempt to, once we know that something exists. And that's why I wanted today's show to be the way it is. And I can't help myself anyway, because I see it, I say it. You all know what I'm like. Yes, Jam, blackmail is the control and politicians are easily blackmailed. I do wonder what my next guest has to say about this. Let's find out. Here he is, Zed Phoenix. Good morning to you, Zed. You can hear what you've entered into, right?
Good morning, Sonia. You've made me feel better already.
Yeah, we hate them. We loathe and hate them. They're parasites around here. You are, of course, a British filmmaker. You're an investigative journalist. You're an author. You're known for your work in social and political activism. You are the reason that this man, Ken Clarke, ran away from me and dived under a rope outside Parliament. Zed, you've been so badly defamed for so many years because of your fight against these parasites. You were a child actor, right?
Yeah, and that's all I wanted to be. I wanted to be an actor, Sonia, and make my films. I didn't even want to be Steven Spielberg. I just wanted to make the films that I wanted to make and be in the things that I could occasionally get into. And of course, that wasn't part of my journey. And when the Jimmy Savile story broke, they said it was just the BBC. It was just in his era. And I said, no, it wasn't. It was in my era as well. And so I really felt like I had to stand up and say something. And I don't regret it. If I had the time over again, I would absolutely 100% do it again.
Good on you. And I would absolutely 100% support you again as well, because actually it turns out that you've been able to prove rather a lot. And those who came after you and tried to stop some of your allegations, they ended up getting a bloody good thumping in the courts, right? So let's just work through this a little bit. So you were a child actor. Were you in EastEnders and The Bill? Did I get that correct?
Yeah, except that the episodes that I've done in EastEnders were deleted by the BBC when we went to court. Now, my mother kept every single little piece of, kept every document I ever had.
As we mums do.
That's right. Contracts and notes. And so when they said that I never went to the Sylvia Young Theatre School, I had a note from Sylvia saying, the key's under the mat, let yourself in, make yourself a cup of tea. Because I was living in her basement in her very nice studio downstairs. And the same with the BBC. They deleted the episodes. We had the contracts. And yes, I was in The Bill. I did The Bill 3 times. And I played a mugger, a football hooligan, and a murderer. And in the end, when they asked me to go back to do something else, I said, I'm going to come back and play a police officer. Otherwise, I'm not coming back. Well, never heard from them again.
So you went to Sylvia Young. My daughter went to Sylvia Young only on Saturdays. And I was like a hawk watching her. But there was a lot of rumours up. I didn't know about it at the time, but there was a lot of rumours about Sylvia Young's theatre school. I presume you heard those rumours.
Yeah. Well, not at the time. I didn't. I mean, I was desperate to be at Sylvia Young Theatre School.
So was everybody. It was made that way through media. It was the place to go if you wanted to get in theatre.
Yeah, that's right. So I went to a local drama school in Solihull in Birmingham in the Midlands. From there, I got picked to go to the RSC to be Macbeth. And then I kind of got to do all the kids' parts at the RSC for a while. And so I was desperate to take this further and to be professional, you know. So you had to go get an equity card, and you probably had to go to stage school. And of course, Sylvia Young Theatre School was the place to be. And I'd met Sophie Lawrence, who I think was on EastEnders at the time. And so she encouraged me. She'd gone to Sylvia's, and I liked her. And I thought, well, that's where I want to go. So it kind of even spurred me on even more, really.
And I think the program that kind of put you into my arena, that made me know about you, was to do with the Cook Report, right? Was that where the incident with Ken Clark happened that you talk about? What can you tell us, Seth? We're not monetized, free flow.
Great, brilliant. So that came about because I had a summer where I'd finished a TV series, and a play I was starting wasn't going to start until like something like September or October. So I had the whole summer, wasn't really doing anything. My mother had a contract with Central Television to do some legal stuff and what have you, and had met this chap from there. I won't mention his name now because he's a really good guy, and I don't want to, continue things with him and stuff like that, right? It's called Richard, though. And so he said, would Ben like to do something a bit James Bondy? And my mom said, oh, he'd probably love that. He says it's with the Cook Report. It's all very cloak and dagger. It's all very secret stuff. But he'd have to go down to London and stuff like that. So I jumped at it. I was like, how much do I get paid? What's this to do with? And so I was a willing participant in that, and I was excited to be there. I got like £100 a day or something like that, and off I trotted down to London, met the producers of the show. And they basically didn't tell me anything of what I was supposed to do. I was just hanging out with Richard, who was this older businessman, and I was playing his younger assistant, who was supposed to be about 15, and I was 18. So at those days, I looked very young as a child actor. So I could pull it off because they knew that politicians like to hang out with young boys. I didn't know that at the time. So I was almost being used as like a honey trap type of situation. And that's what came about. So the story was about political lobbying, and how a political lobbyist called Ian Greer was influencing Parliament and, buying votes or what have you he was doing, right? And so I went to one of these meetings with a briefcase camera and a jacket camera, and I met Ken Clark in the office. He introduced himself as Ken Clark because they tried to pass off that I'd met Peter Morrison, who was a dead paedophile at the time. They said, oh, no, here's a picture of Peter Morrison, here's a picture of Ken Clark. I said, well, Ken Clark is the one I met because he introduced himself. And so, and then I was groped in the office, essentially it was conversation. I was given whiskey and a drink and stuff like that. And I was groped over the trousers by Ken Clark, and he wanted me to go to a place called Dolphin Square and bring my friends there, which of course I agreed to, but I had no intention of going because I was working for the Cook Report. And they obviously didn't know that at the time, but that's what he wanted me to do.
And you had a criminal charge for this, for perverting the course of justice, for saying this about Ken Clark. And you were cleared of that, right?
Yeah, at the Old Bailey. So, I mean, it couldn't have been more serious, Sonia. So the police came to me and they bullied me, really, into making a statement against Ken Clark because I didn't want to do it. I had no interest in it. I was willing to tell the story. I was willing to be open about it, as I was about Max Clifford, who I gave evidence to another unit. I think it was Fairbridge or Fernbank or whatever they were called then. And so I was helping the police on one hand, and then another set of police from the paedophile unit were bullying me and trying to get me to make a statement. So in the end, I kind of went, well, you know what? Put my money where my mouth is. I'll make a statement. So I did, and it was a lengthy statement. It was detailed, and I gave every piece of information I could. In 6 weeks' time, that investigation was closed down. A secret one was opened up against me, and which, of course, I didn't know about. And so then I went on shows, and I was being interviewed by people and stuff like that. So inadvertently, I was perverting the course of justice. But how could I have possibly known when it was a secret police investigation going on against me? And so it was a 2-week trial at the Old Bailey, and I was found not guilty. And that's really when all the trouble began.
Yeah, it
Really.
did. I want to just quickly address the issue of your name. Ella's mentioned it in the comments, and we need to address that because, you just said your mum called you Ben. You were Ben Fellows. Why did you change your name to Zed Phoenix?
Well, I was having such a horrendous time after the trial. I couldn't get a job. I was basically homeless, living on people's couches and things like that. I'd gone to a job interview at Hornby, the trains, and I was going to film the trains. It was all a video filming job. And the CEO came in and he berated me, saying that Ken Clark was a great man and I'm scum of the earth. Even if it was true what he did, I'm still scum of the earth and this is a great guy. And this started a pattern. Every job interview I went to, there's no smoke without fire. We can't have you working here. I've Googled you. All this kind of stuff went on. So I went, you know what? I'm going to change my name. So I asked my mom, because obviously she adopted me. I was an abandoned baby. And so I asked her, I said, look, I'm thinking about changing my name. What do you think? And she said, well, it's probably a good idea. She didn't think I was going to change my name to Zed Phoenix, which came to me in a dream, right? And I went, that's my name. I should have probably changed my name to John Clark and kept a low profile.
Right, probably not Clark, though, actually. A little bit odd, wouldn't it?
John Smith.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I got you, because I think there's a sense, and obviously a lot of kind of turmoil in your young life, being adopted and then going through all these experiences and the abuse. What did you report about Max Clifford?
Okay, so I met Max. I was an actor and I was being fairly successful at the time, and he wanted to represent me. And so he invited me to various parties and stuff. So I went to Peter Stringfellow's and things like that. I was 13 years old, but, with other 13-year-olds and other people who I knew, So all that was going on. And so what he does with Max is that he got you in his office and he basically said, look, tell me all your secrets. Because if I know your secrets and what you've done, then the press, essentially, when they get hold of it, can't use it against you. So you'd sit there and you'd say, I had nothing to tell. I hadn't done anything, I wasn't a drug abuser and, I wasn't, secretly gay or anything like that. And pretending that I was straight, all that kind of stuff. So there was nothing really to tell him. So that's what I basically told the police. When they came to see him, and I said, look, he does these tapes and he video recorded you and he tape recorded you as well. So I said, you'll find those tapes somewhere. They'll probably be in his house. And of course, when they came out, they had the big box of tapes from lots of celebrities and lots of famous people he'd recorded over the years, giving him personal information, which is what an intelligence agency would do. It's what Jeffrey Epstein has done. It's what all these people seem to do,
I've known you now probably 15 years. It's been quite a long time. I've taught you quite a long, and throughout all of that, there's always been drama around you. Like there's always so much drama, and it's like you're either having to be on the run to get away from these people because you're frightened for your life, or the BBC are basing some drama on you when they've already done everything they can to dismiss you. But there's always some kind of drama, and it must be absolutely exhausting. Aren't you just exhausted by it all, Zed?
Yeah, I'm fed up with it. But what they do is they put you in this kind of tornado. And I've learned to deal with this now.
Yeah.
And it's like, so they come at you. So, it doesn't matter who comes at you. It's all weird people doing weird things. And I've learned now to stay very calm and very centered and just let them get on with it. I have my reality. I know what I'm doing. I know who I am. I'm like titanium now, Sonia, right? They have to come pretty much. Some guy, so two people tried to stab me, last year. And, accidental stabbing. And when I went out, the police were waiting. There was 2 police cars and 4 police officers there waiting. And I was like, it didn't happen. And they all looked at each other like, so that was something. I can't tell you for certain, but it was something. So, all this kind of goes on. But, so I'm in this tornado and I just have to keep on going. And I keep doing my thing. I set up a website. I want to do something. It gets disappeared. I had a bank account that got disappeared with a couple of £1,000 in it. I get money missing from my accounts all the time. It doesn't matter. You just keep on going. And the bullying continues, whether it's the police or, the Freemasons. A guy called Roy, who was a Freemason, quite a high up one, actually. He's died now. But he sent me an email from the Freemasons that basically said that I was an enemy of Freemasons. My name is Ben Fellows, calls himself Zed Phoenix now, and they should make my life as difficult as possible. Now, that made a lot of sense to me when I read that email, and I was relieved. And I went, I'm not making it up. I'm not imagining all this stuff happening to me. And now I have the proof of that, and that kind of has continued, But you just got to keep going, Sonia. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. These are horrible, terrible people doing terrible things, and there's good people in there as well trying to do the thing,
There is, and what they do is anybody like you comes out immediately gets deemed a fantasist, right? That's one of their ploys, one of their tactics. We've seen it, and then the mainstream media are in bed with these parasitical people as well. They all kind of round together, don't they? And you've been deemed a fantasist more times than I've got fingers to count. Zed.
Well, that should be the greatest qualification. I think the prosecution said I was a convincing fantasist. Well, I should be in marketing and advertising then, shouldn't I?
Wow, is that what the prosecution said about you?
Yeah, on day one.
Holy crap. So you've talked about lots of stuff that I haven't necessarily been able to confirm, but one of the things you talked about, I talked to you recently about this, and I told my viewers about this recently, was to do with Esther Rantzen. And you talked about when you were essentially a child actor, you were taken to her New Forest home for a party. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it was a party, so it was kind of like there was various tents set up in the grounds and stuff like that. I was doing, I think, Guys and Dolls for the National Youth Music Theatre at the time, and Prince Edward was the patron, I believe, of the National Youth Music Theatre. So I was asked, along with a whole bunch of other people, to go down, and I think I had to sing a song or something like that, and sing for your supper kind of thing. And it was party. There was lots of people there. It was a gathering and all this kind of stuff. Then that kind of changed from the afternoon kind of thing where everyone was there. I think Prince Edward was there. I think Jimmy Savile might have been there for a little time, but then left. That kind of thing happened. And then there was a party, essentially, and it kind of descended. But I was young. I was drinking alcohol, which I shouldn't have been drinking, really. There was a few drugs being passed about, which, yes, I do. I did take drugs and stuff like that when it was available. And there was sex going on and stuff like that. Now, nothing happened to me personally while I was there that was untoward other than that. But having children there drinking alcohol and taking drugs is not something that someone who set up Childline should be involved with, So, that was basically it, really.
I mean, Esther Rantzen, I should say, has never confirmed that this party took place, and it's essentially your word against hers. But I am highly critical of her and the people she's been around, and her stance and her apparent ignorance about Jimmy Savile. So you do have a problem with Childline, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was a child procuring network, as far as I can see it,
It's extraordinary. We live in an inverted world, and that is, we are told, for example, that, Childline, as one example, the NSPCC is there to protect children. And we've seen one egregious safeguarding issue after another to do with these organizations. Did Esther ever respond to your claims? I know you gave a statement to DCI Paul Settle, didn't you?
Yes, that's right. And also I kind of gave names of other people who I knew who were there as well to confirm that it had taken place. So there was a journalist who I was kind of talking to, and he had called Esther Rantzen. And at first, I think he said, oh, she's denied everything and blah, blah, blah. And then later, at some other point, he came back to me and said, well, actually, she did remember the party now, and that you were probably there. So I think that's about as best as I could get it,
So children wanting to get into acting, do you think that they are now more or less vulnerable than they were, now that society has apparently become so aware of how vulnerable are? I'm not convinced that children are any safer. What are your thoughts about child actors?
Well, I think they're a little safer than they probably were back in my day, when there were no safeguards whatsoever. I have to say, when I was at the Royal Shakespeare Company, they did everything absolutely right. They had chaperones. You weren't allowed to mix with the adult actors at all without a chaperone being present. They did an amazing job. And that is actually the standard of what I've always said should be with child actors. You know, you don't just drop your kids off and disappear. You stay with them, right? You go to these auditions. I was often asked to take my top off at auditions and stuff. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And then, you know, one occasion, the police came to my mother and said that I'd appeared in a paedophile catalogue in Amsterdam. And so, you know, and that was from auditions and stuff like that. So I think they might be a little bit safer now. And a little bit more safeguards than they were back in my day. But I don't know. I don't have children. You know, anyone who says that they want to become a child actor to me now, I tell them not to do it and go to university, do something else, get a job. And if you still really want to do it when you become an adult, then do it as an adult, but don't do it as a child actor. I mean, really, you know, child actors really shouldn't really exist. Really,
right?
You know, we don't really have any business being in television. It's an adult environment, you know.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Apparently there's a lot of censoring going on in the comments, the live chat today. Interesting. Humphrey says removing comments. And there's a few people saying it. And I can absolutely assure my viewers, as they know, that I have nobody in the comments removed. So this is outside of us. Outside of us. Danielle loves you, Zed. You should know that, by the way, in the comments. So I get very frustrated and very concerned that we talk about this and nothing seems to be changing. And I don't know what the solution is, Zed. More vulnerable children, and they're going to be reliving it in 50 years' time. I mean, is there a solution to any of this?
The solution is, it's a complicated one, really. It's for us to keep standing up. So someone yesterday spoke to me, knowing that I was coming on the show, saying that her relative was abused as a child actor by a very famous star. And but they won't stand up and they won't talk about it. And I'm saying, well, look, now's the time to do that. You can come and talk to me. You know, if you want to have a private conversation and talk to me, you can do that. But also, I think we need to stand up and talk about it. This particular Hollywood actor was actually charged and went to court. So that was the time for that person to say something, and they didn't still, right? I've received a letter over the past couple of months, which I've now verified as being true, which was about my abuse with a Hollywood star back in the day, right? And that person was in the room. And so it was weird having it being described from that point of view. And of course, I've tried to take action on that. And this Hollywood person has essentially hired all the solicitors in London, that well, in the country really, that would be involved in this kind of thing. They've got private security companies that come and bully me, and it's funny because they met me and they tried to tell me that, you know, I was in danger and all this kind of stuff. And I said, what private security company are you from? And they told me, and I said, my friend owns it. And I called them up. And what a coincidence, my old landlady from Glastonbury actually is a senior partner in that security company.
Dear God.
Yeah. And that's so, you know.
It is very, very hard, but you'll know, and like you say, stand up, right? But it's really hard when you've been abused because there's so much shame that accompanies that. It must have been hard for you to originally come out and make those allegations about Ken Clark, right? Because you're a young man and you're admitting that something has happened to you. How difficult was it?
I was so angry, I destroyed my kitchen. And I mean destroyed my kitchen. You know, when I was thinking about doing this, and my poor ex-wife Julia had to put up with a lot of nonsense from me, quite frankly, during that time, and it just triggered me, and there was nothing that I could do about it. And you know, I destroyed the kitchen. I basically destroyed my relationship as well, you know, which I'm, you know, it's just devastating. But you know, that's my responsibility because I did come out and say stuff, right? And so I made that choice to do it. I was so angry, and I thought this has got to stop. You know, for me personally. And then you know, so you come out, you say it, you get a response because at first I didn't think I'd get any response whatsoever. And the response was quite positive. I got interviewed for the Express and various other things and blah, blah, blah. And then the hit pieces start and all that kind of stuff, which I'm okay. I'll put myself out there. I get all that. You know, they're going to do that. What I didn't expect was to be criminally charged. That was the surprise. I thought I might be sued. But of course, they didn't go that. And of course, this didn't come from Ken Clark, by the way. This came from sources unknown outside of that. The police, we think, took it upon themselves as the protectors of MPs and
Well,
higher
that's the
status
thing.
people.
That's what they end up doing, isn't it? Protecting the party, protecting the country, while everybody else is getting abused under this banner. One of the interesting things you said to me recently, it really resonated with me, is that they turn you into a complainer. They want to make it be that you are someone who goes around causing trouble. Expand on that for me.
Okay, so what the police have on their system are notes, right? I don't have a criminal record. I wasn't found guilty, but in their notes, they put, oh, he's a liar, he's a fantasist, he's a this. And a policeman told me this. They said when they rocked up, I got beaten up by two women who I knew, well, I knew who they were, stole my phone, ripped my clothes off. I got a fractured knee and I got black eye. I was really beaten up. And they turned up 2 days later, said I couldn't make a statement about it because of who I was. And I was like, what are you talking about? Oh, you're this, that, and the other. They started saying it's in the notes. And I went, oh my gosh. So that's how the police do it. So when a police person rocks up, you know, because something's happened to you, something's probably staged that's happened to you as well, by the way. That happens a lot. Then they come with a preconceived idea and they don't do anything. And you get a call a couple of days later, say, we're not going to do anything. And I said, I really want to make this statement. And they said, there's no one to take it. You know, so
that's extraordinary.
You know.
So, I mean, I don't know if I've already mentioned this to you. I had two police at my door. I probably have. I've told everybody. Anyway, but I had two police at my door last week, and it just made me think: who do I turn to when I feel I'm being harassed by the police? Right? Who do you turn to in those sort of situations? It's kind of what you're talking about, because on your police files, because an officer had told you to read the notes, right, surrounding your name, and in that, even though you, as you say, you don't have a criminal record, but you were heavily demonized. Don't believe this person is a fantasist, and now they're not even prepared to take statements from you. I mean, how vulnerable does that make you feel?
Well, not only won't they take a statement, I've been told they won't come out on a call, right? So if I do get stabbed, they're not going to turn up. I don't get any help whatsoever from them or you know. So I'm on my own, Sonia, right? And what they call it a demoralization exercise. So when you complain to the police and they don't respond in the way that you expect them to, you get demoralized. And that's what they want to have happen. And I was told that by a very senior commander of the police who took me to one side. And actually, I'd been beaten up by the police outside their secret offices in Cromwell Road in London when I was trying to pick up my computer. And he took me to one side and he said, "Look, this is what's going on, and this is what's going to happen to you. It's called a demoralization exercise. It's
extraordinary.
They write it down. It's a plan, and they put it into action." You know, it's like questioning someone. You know how to question someone. You walk them down the corridor, you close all the doors, and the one that they walk through at the end is the one you want them to walk through. It's that kind of procedure. So that's what happens. I've had police turn up at my door to tell me not to write things on my Facebook page. I write articles for myself, really, and to keep for my own mental health. No one reads them. And they said, I should be careful. And I said, where have you come from? And they said, well, London. I said, well, who sent you? We can't say. Who's made the complaint? We can't say. And I said, so what are you doing? He said, well, we've just come up from London to Liverpool. So it's a nice day trip for them. But they didn't really know why they were here. They were just there to warn me, again.
Oh, well, that's just the same as the cops who came. They had no idea why they were here. And it was really just to try and intimidate me and threaten me. And I'm like, you have no idea who I am. I am my mother's daughter. You people are in trouble now. You absolutely are. But Zed, I know we have to keep going. And that's the reality. No matter what, we have to keep going. And it is my experience that you've always put a smile on it. And you've always been very upbeat and very your spirit is always up and everything. But how does it impact you?
I live on my own with my dog. I'm a hermit. I spend most of my time by myself. I don't have any friends anymore because I don't trust people, and the people that I have had in my life have acted so strangely that I just can't have them in my life anymore. So it's a solitary. I'm completely. So it's kind of like, in a way, and I thought this not so long ago, I kind of wish I'd been found guilty, really, and gone to prison. Right, because it'd be over.
Wow. Oh, mate. Mind you, Ian, who is it who said that? Stolly said, living on your own with a dog, can't fault that. I hear you. Although I don't live on my own, I don't wish to, but I get you. And it is hard, very tricky times that we're dealing with. Somebody mentioned about, why don't you go to the IOPC? The problem about the IOPC, I was doing the figures yesterday, and the IOPC is currently staffed by 200 former police officers. So they're just marking their own homework. So you can't even go there.
Well, I have been there.
Right.
And sometimes you get a helpful person that will give you some information or something like that. But outside, I mean, every police person who comes to me, essentially, and who doesn't act appropriately, by the way, right? I make a complaint about, right? At some point, it adds up. I don't know, what that's for, really, but I feel like I have to do it. If nothing else, that it goes on their record, and hopefully will make them act a bit more appropriately on another occasion to someone else,
Yeah.
But it's a lonely existence, and, and for anybody, I've told people who are coming out with information on other subjects, probably not to do it. I said, look, this is what you're going to get, and this is what's going to happen to you. If you must do it, I had to do it. I had no choice but to do it. So if you feel like that, then by all means do it, but just be prepared. There are unintended consequences that arrive at your door. And just because you're doing the right thing, you're living essentially in a satanic cult that will hate you for it. I thought my country would be proud of me. That's how stupid I was.
Bless you.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you. Fokker Film says, I'm so sorry to hear that, Zed. I think you could meet decent new friends at Truther conferences, but you've been all down that path as well, haven't you? I know. And the problem is you, like me, have discovered that just because they claim to be truthers, a lot of these people aren't necessarily very saintly. Right.
No,
and not necessarily a mate. And there's still all the old stuff that still exists amongst human beings, the unnecessary competition, the jealousy, the rivalry, the competitiveness, all that sort of stuff. Amy feels for you. People are concerned that the IOPC is a whole layer above the law. Yes, in many respects it is. Mm-hmm. And so I saw somebody say that the IOPC did absolutely nothing about their unlawful arrest. And this is interesting. Bob says, you want to make a complaint, eh? Where do you live? And it is that sense, isn't it? It's almost like, okay, you're complaining. Let me find out more about you to see how we can target you, stop you, demonize you, or, treat you as a fantasist. Zed, before you leave us today, just tell me where you're up to, because I know you have not stopped with your investigations and trying to hold people to account. Tell us where you're up to.
Okay, so on the Wirral is a CO2 pipeline planned, which is going to take liquid CO2 out to the Irish Sea and dump it in an underground vault, which in actual fact, I think it's a pretty good idea to put chemical waste in these underground vaults. I think that's probably okay. However, it's an area of natural beauty, and they're going to carve it up with a CO2 pipeline. Anyway, that's not really what's going on. The CO2 pipeline is kind of a test. It's a showroom for investors in other countries to say, look what you can do with your waste, and we can help you with your climate change plan, regardless of what you think about climate change or anything like that, right? So there's another two projects. There's also a hydrogen project in the same space that has to happen by 2030. And there's also Sellafield, the nuclear disposal of nuclear waste, right? And they're looking at that project as well. So not only is it a CO2 project, it's a hydrogen project and also a nuclear waste project as well. All happening, all going through to the Wirral. And if it can happen here, it can happen anywhere. And of course, they've made it a national infrastructure issue. So it's out of the council and out of local MPs' hands. And nobody really knows what to do about it. And so I wrote to a guy called Nigel Topping, who is the chairman of the Climate Change Committee, and said, look, we want a forward view. There are other avenues to go down. And he's basically said, well, he's in favour of trains. And in Norway, they've got a boat that takes CO2 out and sticks it in an underground vault. And so why can't we have the boat? The government's already approved it. So why aren't we having it? It's because Ed Miliband wants to have his showroom so that they can then sell the technology to other countries. Meanwhile, the people of the world are suffering. So that's where I'm up to right now.
You've always been a campaigner and activist and a bit of an entrepreneur as well. I remember when you were doing your own, I think, search engine at one stage. You were trying to do that, and then you were also fighting against digital ID. You've always been very ahead of the curve fighting this kind of stuff. So what do you ultimately want to happen in terms of the world? You just want to raise awareness of it? You want to stop it? What do you want to do?
Well, I think, the people of the world need to have full picture. And that's essentially what I'm doing.
Yes.
Right. And then they can make an informed decision about whether they want this project in there. It's probably not a bad project, really, on the surface. But they don't know that, essentially, if you have nuclear waste going through pipes and it leaks, you have cesium going into your water table, and that will poison people. And funny enough, they've just put 4 cancer centres on the Wirral. And also you can go and get an MRI scanner. If you go to the Morrisons, they've got an MRI scanner in Morrisons. So you can go and get yourself MRI scanned. All this is in preparation for ... just in case things happen.
Right.
And, so, but the government, right, should be persuading people with, say, like a tax break. If they said, look, we're going to build this pipe, who would like £2,000 in cash or, for the next 2 years while we build it? Everyone would have gone, yes, that's great. It's only 380,000 people here. It probably add about £1 billion to the thing, but they don't do that. They come at a sort of, they do their usual thing, is that they kind of tell you half truths. They kind of say to you that not the full picture or anything like that, and that's how they go about things, And so I just want people to have the full picture. And if that then prevents the government from doing what they're doing, well, so be it. There's other choices that are safer, and they've already agreed them. So why aren't we doing that?
Exactly. Monica in the comments says action against CCS are fighting the peat cluster project here on the Wirral and others across the UK. Got you. Zed, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you, and just take good care of yourself. You know where I am if you ever need me, or you need me as some sort of backup. Zed frequently sends me stuff for safekeeping, which I then put somewhere else out of my domain for safekeeping, right?
Bless you.
Just so
Thank you.
everybody, no worries. You take good care of yourself, everybody. This is Zed Phoenix.
Thank
Lovely
you,
to
Sonia.
see you again.
Bye, sis.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure. And one of our fighters, kids, one of our fighters. And we're all fighting. We're fighting for our sodding lives here, aren't we? Fighting for the ability to be able to speak freely. What is going on in the comments? I saw so many people saying that they were either shadow banned or what's happening? What was happening there? I'm an introvert, so I don't trust people to begin with, said Mr. Dunham. I saw this funny meme. You're going to laugh. Honestly, I don't mean it, but it kind of resonated with me. And that is, there are 2 people in this world. Avoid them both. I'm kidding. But honestly, a lot of the time, I do prefer the company of animals. I just do. Human beings are just too sodding problematic a lot of the time. Randy's never shadow banned. YouTube block comments. It's woke on here, says Florence. It's going to get worse in the 3D world, said Boops. Ooh, thank you, Zed. God bless, says Gringa Polska. Lovely man. Where is Zed online? I will find contact details for you, Poppet. Right, let's move on with other news, other stuff that I wish to cover. Big shout out to Evan Slater. Good morning to you, Evan. Evan said, I learned so much from your channel. Love listening to you in the mornings. Who would have thought the checklist for a civil engineer after a strong tea is Sonia Poulton? And thank you, Evan. And Evan is round about the age, I think, that Madeleine McCann would have been. So one of our younger viewers, which we absolutely love. Bring it on. Mad Cat Ladies Unite, said Owley. And Deborah said, it's called suppression. Freedom of speech isn't free anymore. Right. Oh, dear. Myson, I'm sorry to hear what your neighbour's cat does all over your garden. That's annoying. He does, Stolly. Zed always speaks so well. Yes, indeed, he does. Right, let me turn to some of your shout, okay? Very interesting comment here. This is from somebody whose name I'm going to keep back at their request. But it doesn't matter. They've sent me the information and I've been able to verify it. And it's very interesting. So what they said was that they had just had another spinal epidural to ease the pain of slip discs. This time I was asked on the phone if I'd had the vax within the last 2 weeks. No, OBS. And I think talking about C19 one. Then at the appointment, I was asked again and it was typed into the computer. Then I was asked again on a form I had to sign. Finally, when doing the final checks before surgery, they went through my answers, paying attention to me not having had a COVID vax in the last 2 weeks. And if I was on blood thinners, I asked why. And very cagily, they said something about clotting. And they know that it causes clotting. So thank heavens, she said that she's not, right? Proudly told them so. No reaction of shock or horror either. And she sent me her appointment letter. The consent form was very vague, re the COVID jab. But she was asked 4 times in all if she'd had the vax within the last 2 weeks. What's going on, kids? What is going on? Was it mandatory to answer? No, probably not, Randy, because you can always say, I don't want to answer that, right? But I think if you're actually going to be having a spinal epidural and it's one that you've had after many others, then you probably have to, it's probably sensible to admit to it, because then if something goes wrong, you can't hold the hospital to account because they say that you withheld information. They know what they did, Shug. Follow the money, says Billy. They know what they did. Yes, indeed, they do. And of course, I noted last week, right, after we did the extended show last week and I talked about 19 years of Madeleine McCann. Well, of course, did you notice that the day after the 19th anniversary, the Metropolitan Sodding Police, run by Mark Sodding Rowley, they then put out this whole idea that they're now going to get Christian Bruckner extradited from Germany to stand trial. It's not going to happen. It's absolutely not going to happen. If I could put a bet on it, I actually would. It's just ridiculous. They don't have on him what they want. They put out that statement, which was then, like telegraph all over the news, the whole usual thing. And the whole idea is to make us believe that the Scotland Yard, Operation Grange are doing something, that they haven't wasted our 14 million plus money, right? But it's nonsense. And they cannot extradite him from Germany. What for? He may have done a million things, but I'm pretty sure he didn't take Madeleine McCann. And thank you all for your kind responses to the Madeleine McCann video. I appreciate it very, very much. All of you. Wonderful people. And so many wonderful comments. I do truly appreciate it. And it was a long show last week, 3 hours. I'm very impressed with anyone who saw it through to the bitter end. And Susan was one of them. She said, as you say, Sonia, quality, not quantity. I managed to follow through right to the end of your podcast, mainly due to being absorbed in my knitting while tuning in. Hey, Susan, I'm for that. Absolutely. So thank you all for that. And David Gray, who was often in the comments, has been in Prada-Luz over the last week. Good morning to you, David, and giving me updates as well. Interesting stuff going on. So look at this, kids. So when I've been to Prada-Luz, which is obviously where Madeleine was reported missing from, and very famously, the stop signs have always said, stop the McCann circus. Well, David took this image. They've scrubbed it out. Because they don't want any reference to the McCanns at all in their beautiful little holiday village. And he agreed with what one of my viewers who part lives in PDL had said last week, and that is the PDL are just over the McCanns. They don't want anything to do with them. They don't want any reference to them. And so, yes, somebody had erased even Stop the McCann Circus. Don't blame them, Shug. No, Van Man, they have no proof it was him at all. Simon, I get you. Yes, I was Fokker Films. I was on the money right from the start. Absolutely. Flo is sat in Manchester on a council estate. Not wrong with that. Not wrong with that. So yes, thank you, David Gray. And David said, I'm currently in PDL. Apartment 5A seems securely out of action, but it has inspired me to make a few memes. Indeed it has. And I appreciate that. But yeah, essentially the whole village is over it. They don't care whether it's the anniversary or not. And who can blame them? They had livelihoods destroyed there full of lies. Lies. And another viewer, Ruth, good morning to you, Ruth, had contacted me from China. Actually, this is interesting. Hi, Sonia. And this was actually sent a couple of weeks ago. And sometimes I miss letters or miss emails. I didn't miss this one, but I did mean to read this last week and didn't. But I thought it was really interesting. And Ruth had just watched that show, and it was about the first anniversary of Virginia Giuffre's death. And Virginia Giuffre, of course, probably the most famous Epstein victim, who had said that she had been essentially sold to have sex with Andrew, formerly known as Prince Andrew. And so let me just read you this from Ruth. It's lovely. Coincidentally, I was at the massage school that Virginia attended in Chiang Mai yesterday. I knew that she'd come to Thailand, rather, not China. I knew that she'd come to Thailand to study massage. And that was where she met and married very quickly her husband and got away from Epstein and Maxwell's grip. But I only recently learned that she went to school in Chiang Mai, where I currently live. The school is about 10 minutes walk from my apartment. I don't know how you will feel about this, but I was thinking maybe there could be a way of memorializing the time she spent here to honor her bravery and help victims of abuse. I don't really know what that looks like, but I thought I'd make contact and see what you say. Could be interesting to track down people who met her during her time here and get their take. Ruth, I am totally up for it because I would like to remember Virginia in her own right. I remember a part of her book where she talks about how if they could only just see her as someone's daughter, someone's sister, rather than just someone to abuse. And that touched me so much when I read that particular line. And so I would also like to see Virginia Giuffre remembered as somebody who wasn't just a victim, but an essential person in her own right, who stood up to the predators. She was a leader. She deserves some recognition and perhaps of a happier time. And I'm well aware of the allegations that were made about her husband. And some people believed absolutely that led to her taking her life. And other people believe that there is no way on this earth or any other that she took her own life. And I don't know where you stand on that. I initially thought absolutely she took her own life. It was all bearing down on her. She wasn't able to see her own children, which was an appalling decision. Her husband had been previously convicted when they were in America of hurting her, and yet the court decided in his favor when they were in Australia and denied her access to her children for a period of time. And I thought all of the stress of that had just led to her taking her life. And we saw that awful where she'd apparently had an accident, but she was all bruised and everything. I think that's a wonderful idea. If anybody is associated with Virginia or is in Thailand, Chiang Mai, or knows anything and feels they'd like to do something to remember her, I'm totally up for it. Do you think so, Ian? Do you think so? And Sentence said, do you ever consider, oh, come on, let me read that. Let me read that. Do you ever consider that Giuffre is very much live and is a part of this psyop? Yes, I mean, anything's possible. We cannot rule anything out anymore. We've been lied to so extensively that it would be ludicrous of us to just always accept mainstream narratives, right? Absolutely. So yes, I do consider that. And I consider that actually on a fairly frequent basis. I wonder if she's still alive. I wonder if Epstein's still alive. I mean, these are things I consider, and that doesn't make me a conspiracy theorist. It makes me someone who knows the tricks of the establishment, wherever that establishment is. So yes. But you know what? I think we all deserve a laugh. Do you fancy a laugh? Yvonne contacted me. Let me find some of Yvonne's images. This is funny. Now, you know that, I mean, we all know that some of my purchases online have been less than successful, right? I bought a shelf the other week for my kitchen. It turned out to be a 3D print of a shelf. So I want you to tell me what you think this is. This is Yvonne. Good morning to you, Yvonne. I hope you're well. Okay, guys, in the comments, what is this? What is this? Ian said we need a laugh. Did you love the bonsai shelf, Herbert? Was that a podcast? What's that? We need some fun interventions on your show. You do, Randy. Right, everybody, tell me what this is. Herbert thinks it's an ashtray. No clue, says Danielle. Egg boiler. Oh, guys, you are going to laugh at this, right? And let me just show you to give you an idea of the actual size of it in relation to, so that's kind of like a coffee cup, right? So that shows you it in relation to like one of those coffee beakers. Okay, are you ready? It's a mini washing machine. It's a mini washing machine, right? They sell this kind of madness on like TikTok and Temu, right? What are you going to get in that mini washing machine? Anybody tell me? Hantavirus maker. Never seen one of them before in my life, says Deb. It's not an egg cooker. It's a mini washing machine, kids. Yes. Dark side of the moon. Yes. And for the tiniest socks, Reba, right. It would be like essentially for a pair of knickers, right? And a hanky. For mice, said Milford. But Yvonne said, I can't really see me getting my jeans in there, right? And she's like me. She's basically a sucker for these online. They look so good because the pictures are always completely out of context. And you can't tell. It's a knicker washer, some kind of steamer, and Pippa doll clothes. Right. Anyway, they're all having a laugh. Listen, Yvonne, don't feel bad about it. Well, she doesn't, which is why she shared it with me, because we all need a laugh. For you to wash your smalls, says King. What's your veg? Yeah, no, mini washing machine for clothes. For the borrowers. I do believe in the borrowers, Mark. I'm sorry. I do. I don't know. Things just disappear around here. Anyway, Yvonne, thank you for that. I really appreciate that very much. It's so good. And would you like an update on my garden journey? So what I'm eventually doing, as everybody knows, because I keep telling you, is a little girl would like to wash her Barbie doll clothing, said Pizza on the Pavement. I've got you. Pygmies exist. A mini washing machine. Yes, Marilyn. So I'm doing up my garden because basically the garden was lovely until our crazy street dog arrived from Romania at the end of 2020. She tore up the garden. She tore up all the grass, everything, running up and down so fast. She's a guard dog. Anyway, so I decided that was it. I was going to landscape the garden. I was going to design it and I was going to landscape it. And I gave myself a budget of like 200 quid. Well, that's a joke, right? That is a living joke. What is wrong with me? Anyway, it's all coming together beautifully. And what's that house? I don't know what that means, Herbert. What does that mean? Tell me. And you'd never fit a mini in there, says Jane. So anyway, let me show you some pictures. So I built my mini pond, first of all. Here you can see a little bit of it. Here it is. And it's coming together. And so I built all that around it, all the greenery, and that's a little sprinkler in it. And that wood sticking out is for any little creatures to be able to climb out of it if they need to. So I'm so enjoying that. And look, this is my garlic coming through. It's so exciting. Like, it is so exciting to be able to do this. And this is I love garlic. Garlic is one of my favorite foods. I use it a lot. And there's my garlic coming through. Do you know what, Stolly? The sound of files is definitely therapeutic. Absolutely, it is. Thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, Herbert's a bit weird. He wants me to be burying people in my garden. Stephen's late father hated gardening. Do you like it, Linus? Do you like it? Oh, you were laughing about Yvonne's washing machine. Funny stuff. People are funny, but yep, garlic growing. I'm so excited, and just in a little flash of my pond again. So basically, I'm filming myself, like renovating the whole garden. And then I will speed up like they do on TikTok, and I will play you the whole garden renovation in probably about 30 seconds when I've finished. Yes. You grow herbs, do you, Flo? So look into hydroponics. I will, Deborah. I will. My favorite herb is rosemary. My favorite herb. I must grow because we had a beautiful... Oh, I'm doing spuds too, Nikki. My spuds aren't working too great at the moment. Don't talk to me about Temu, says Bob. I'm doing spuds. So who's that? Summer Breeze. I'm doing spuds in buckets and have loads of wild garlic and dandelions and cleavers. What's a cleaver? What's a cleaver, people? Herbs. Or is it spice? Wait, rosemary is a herb, right? Rosemary is the easiest to grow. I love it. I love the smell of it. It's wonderful. Herbert's favorite is basil. but I don't cook with them. Nice aroma though. Frogs, yeah, says Lunis. Listen, Lunis, when I went there, because essentially I'd kind of like put the finishing touches just before the weekend, and bit by bit there is like little creatures that I don't recognize that are coming, and I'm seeing spider webs across it and everything. I'm loving it. Flo's favorite is coriander. I went for spawn from a stream and I had frogs. I'm loving it all. It's so exciting to me because I've never really done a major project like this before, but it is really exciting. So just say, obviously, as ever, thank you, my donators. Thank you to F. Young, to Faye Jennings, to Ian Jones, to Catherine Montgomery, to everybody on the super chat today. Let me just give you another thank you. And that is James, to Nin, to Jill, to Milford, to Danielle, to Catherine, and to Swiss Miss. Thank you so much for your generosity on the super chat today. I truly appreciate it. Thank you to Liz Graham as well. And what do I want to say? So the last thing I want to talk about today is, we're always told about how the process is the punishment. And I know absolutely that is the case. Having endured, being under police investigation, they put me under investigation for 6 months. They knew they were going to do nothing with it because they knew they didn't have enough to charge me. Right? They knew that, but they just put me under police investigation for 6 months to put the pressure on me. Right. So I know very much about the process is the punishment. But as I've been doing this garden and I've thought more about other processes, not every process is a punishment. And sometimes some processes, there's the pleasure in that. And that is what I'm getting. The process is the reward. And I think oftentimes we're so fixated in our society on the end goal, right? On a result. But I'm really enjoying the chaos that is taking place in our garden at this moment in time. And sometimes I go out there some days and it's like it looks kind of crazy. And I've laid down sheeting where I'm doing the path, and we've got the paving stones in, the slabs, but they're all over the place. And I'm just waiting for large stones to be delivered on Wednesday, which will all fill up. But it looks all messy. It looks super messy out there. And it's not kind of like a place that you can necessarily relax in. But there is part of that process is extremely rewarding. And I'm really loving it. And I think one of the things that I'm learning from the process of this gardening is the biggest project I've ever undertaken in the garden. I've done loads of gardening. I've planted before, and I love flowers and all of that. But this is the biggest project I've ever undertaken. And what I'm learning from it is just so much that actually will impact me in other areas of my life. And that is how you can take something that looks a seeming mess, which our garden did, and it can be molded and it can be finessed. And then we start to see a bigger picture. And it's all the things that I can learn within that process. And the process in the punishment actually came from a sociological study by Malcolm Feely. And I had studied it at university. And it was about arguing minor crimes, that the ordeal of navigating the legal justice system was, part of the whole punishment of the process. But I do think it's important to also, even in difficult situations, to try and find some pleasure in the process. Even in difficult situations, right? Because when you start to see silver linings, so the cops turning up at my door, first of all, I was like, what the? Don't like this. This is an infringement of my rights. This is about intimidation. But then I was managed to glean all this incredible information from them. And I'm also now aware of how I can use them coming to my house. And I'm becoming increasingly aware. And so even though part of that process appeared punishing, ultimately, I believe it will work out for my best and for other people's best as well. And there are so many benefits when you are able to see the silver linings and to enjoy and to find pleasure in the process. So many, because first of all, what happens is it sends a message to your brain. And it tells you that you have this incredible perseverance. No matter what, you can overcome the odds, even in difficult situations, whether that's a messy garden or whether that's cops at your door, right? Is that the moment that you seek to find an alternative view to this, the pleasure in the process, it will remind yourself of your incredible perseverance and your ability to survive against all odds. It will also reduce any anxiety of an outcome, because when you focus on the now, what you're doing in the now, it immediately reduces anxiety. It's so important to be present. It is so important to be present. I'm going to today spend some more time in the garden, as long as it's not too crappy weather, because it's very grey at the moment. But I'm going to spend some more time in there in the garden. And I come up with all manner of story ideas, what I want to do next. I also find that when you find pleasure in the process, it builds resilience. And because there's something incredible from learning from our mistakes, right? If we immediately hit targets, you know what they say, right? Easy come, easy go. So you see this, don't you, with Nepo babies and people who have to be associated with somebody famous in order to get on, right? They come in very quickly. They might get a lot of attention, but they go out very quickly. And it's the same thing, is because they've never been through the process. They've never had to learn from their mistakes. They've never learned any of those things, whether it's Brooklyn Beckham, who's suddenly a photographer or whatever, in and out of it really quickly. So I don't like any Nepo stuff, because actually I think it's very damaging to the human spirit, because part of the process of doing whatever it is you want to do, whether that's renovating a garden or writing a book or whatever, part of it is building the resilience and growth necessary in order to keep propelling you on to the next stage. It will also improve your performance. There is nothing like getting it wrong or going through the process to work out how to get it right. Before I haven't completely completed the pond, but when it's complete, it will be complete. But before I'd got to the stage it had, so there's loads of stones around it. There's Cotswold stone. It's lovely, really lovely. But first of all, I put bricks there, and I didn't really like that effect. I didn't like that impact. And so then I replaced it with these kind of Cotswold stone and these slabs, and it looked better. And so that's how I am. And also the thing about the garden is nothing is like stable at the moment, because I want to be able to keep moving it around it's a blank canvas to me. And so everything that I've got in there, including the stones, including the chip-ins, I want still to be able to move around until I decide that everything is staying where it's staying. And again, that is very much part of the process, but it's what I'm learning between all of this. And it really, I think, is putting to rest in my mind this high, because I'd put off this project because I was actually nervous. I thought, this is not my area, this is not my arena, I'm not equipped to do it. Actually, the only way you can find out if you're equipped to do it is to get cracking. And again, whether that's painting, writing a book, or doing up your kitchen, get cracking. Some people say to me, I want to be a writer, how do I do it? I say, write. So I want to be a better gardener, so how do I do it? Well, design the garden that works for me and then get cracking in it. So that's where I'm at, and it's looking at the silver lining, and I'm very much enjoying it. I am very much enjoying it. Raised beds to save your knees and back, says Paul. Optimizing and improving, Drum. Yeah. Have you seen your robin this weekend, Glennis? Yes, the robin came back this weekend. Thank you for asking. Thank you for asking. Yes. See, Mark, I believe that humans are incredible. We can do pretty much anything that we put our mind to. And I've watched so many videos, so many TikToks of how to do the garden. And then I worked, because there was so much, I just had no clue. I didn't know about, like putting down a base so that old weeds could come through or anything else like that. Herbert, oh, I get your point now. Herbert said, your little oasis of buried coppers. Beautiful. Anyway, listen, I just wanted to say that, as per, it's been an adventure with you today, people. Very much appreciate you. Thank you to my new patrons. I will be, yes. Oh, Danielle, it's so lovely, because the thing is that the pond is as natural water as you can humanly get. So my dog keeps slugging a drink from it. Oh, really? Post-Colt has been almost self-sufficient with their allotment since May 2025. You're welcome, Captain Flynn. I'm determined to make elderflower wine this year, says Danglecock. That's an interesting name. You're welcome, Merv. Thank you all. I will see you on Friday. Let me end with this quote from Reba, because that's beautiful. Gardening is a great mindfulness practice, learning to listen and work in harmony with her. Absolutely, indeed. And I have my own quote to end today's show, and that is, find happiness by enjoying the journey, not by awaiting the destination. And I will see you on Friday, you beautiful people. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for all of your generosity of thought and spirit and super chats and everything else. Have a tremendous week. Lots of love to you all. See you Friday. Take good care of yourselves.